Hey everyone, Howie Fisher with Fisher's Flies. Thanks for checking in. I am coming to you live from the Big Buck Inn in Minnesota, Driftless region. And today I am tying up a George Daniel Sculp and Snack variation. I'm using a Jig Force long hook from Fulling Mill in size 8, paired with a slotted tungsten bead as well as some .015 lead wraps to add some extra weight. For the bead, I'm using a 5.5 millimeter slotted tungsten bead. And for the thread today, I'm using 140 denier ultra thread in light olive. I'm going to go ahead and get started with my thread right behind the wire wraps to make sure that doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to go ahead and take some wraps over those wire wraps to make sure that they are secure. I'm then going to take my thread to the bend of the hook, and I'm going to grab my first material, which is Marabou Blood Quill Black Barred Olive. This is a product from Orvis, but you can also find it from Montana Fly Company and some other distributors as well. I'm using a pretty large amount so you can get some really good profile and action on this tail here. I'm going to make it about the length of the hook, and I'm going to tie it in directly on top of the hook. And if you tie it down slightly into the bend and then take some wraps underneath, it will prevent it from fouling around the hook. The further you take it down the hook, the better, technically. And I actually snipped my thread off while I was trimming that off. So I'm going to re-adhere my thread here, snip off that excess, and get back to business. Once I've got a decent little body here, it doesn't need to be perfect because it's going to get covered up, but I like to create a smooth transition. I'm going to grab my Pesca Vita Streamer Straggle in Nymph Mode. This is an Upavon product from England. I really like this material because it is essentially a complex twist, a synthetic complex twist material, but it's one material instead of two. So you get a natural looking hackle, and then you get some flash mixed in there. So the best of both worlds, like I said, it essentially creates a complex twist without the headache and hassle of a complex twist. And I'm just going to go ahead and palmer this forward using the rotary function on my vise. And then once I get to behind the bead, I'm going to tie it off. I do want to leave a little bit of space behind the bead, as you can see here, to allow for the head of this fly. So I'm going to leave about, you could say, a bead's length behind the bead, and then also wrap backwards over the hackle to push it backwards. I'm going to grab some legs here. I'm using olive black flake. You can use whatever color you'd like to match the color combo you're doing. And I'm going to tie in a single strand doubled over on either side. And this is just to add some additional movement and enticability for fish. You can also, depending on the size of the fly you're actually tying, you can take a single strand and cut it in half and double it over, and you'll still get a decent amount. So here, this is where the variation part of this fly comes in. This is a Marabou collar that I'm doing here. And this actually came to me from a friend, Mikey P., who's a local guy here in Maryland. So I'm going to grab the bottom half, good bottom half of a feather here, another Marabou feather. I'm actually going to fold it over on itself and put it into my clip here. Then I'm going to create a split thread dubbing loop. You can do a traditional dubbing loop if you'd like, whichever you prefer. My preference is just the split thread style. You can also add a little bit of wax here if you want, but with Marabou and natural materials, you don't necessarily need to, because the natural oils in it help it kind of stay in place usually. So I'm going to do everything I need to do right here, right now. So I'm going to kind of pull those fibers back if I need to make them length that I want them, and spread them out as well. And then I'm going to start twisting this dubbing loop back up. And the hardest part of this process is making sure you don't get any fibers trapped in the dubbing loop itself or in the other fibers as well. And so it's very useful to have a dubbing brush or a bodkin handy to just, you can see here, constantly kind of lightly picking it out. And I keep getting that leg, one of those legs stuck in the dubbing loop, as you can see there. So I'm actually going to back up 1 or 2 thread wraps and then go ahead and go forward. So I'm going to wrap this forward, pulling these fibers back with each passing wrap. And then once I get to the end of this dubbing loop, I'm just going to go ahead and create a little bit of a head, make sure that is all secure. Brush all this out before I get done with that whip finish, just to make sure it looks how I want it to. At this point, if you need to, you can unwrap everything and rewrap it. So now's the point to do that brushing out and checking. So once it looks like I want it, I will go ahead and whip finish and snip. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit this with some head cement, some Solares Bone Dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and cure that, of course. And if your fibers are a little bit longer than you want them, which they are here a little bit, the nice thing about this is you can just lightly pluck the tips off of the fibers to make that collar shorter. So you can see just by doing that, just by picking the tips of those fibers off, I've made the collar a little bit shorter, and that flash and that hackle is showing through. So tie them up, fish them, let me know what you think.